So one of the questions that I get asked the most frequently is, I've got a brand new printer. I see you obviously have this big giant printer in your videos. And, I've got this brand new printer. I've been trying to print with it. How come my images look like absolute dog crap? And I think that that's the common first impression, buying a new printer, getting ready to print your photos. You've been really working on capturing the best possible photos, and then you go to print and they look dark, they look muddy, the colors look off. It's a really, really common problem. And in this video, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks on how to solve it. So I'm Hudson Henry. This is Approaching the Scene. For those of you who haven't been watching, this is a series of weekly videos that I do every single Thursday. And it's really a conversation about all things photographic, from post-production to capturing better images in the field to conversations with other working photographers. And as I said, conversation, the biggest piece of it is a conversation about photography and creative work. So if you have a question, a comment, don't hesitate to drop it in the YouTube channel's comment section. I take those really seriously. And if you want to email me something, send them to questions@hudsonhenry.com. I look through all of those. And at the end of this little discussion, I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of questions that I got. So I'm going to talk about some questions about locations, about traveling with family, as well as a little bit more on the Nikon Z6, which I'm actually filming this with right now. So my thoughts on it as I'm using it more and more. So jumping in, I want to talk a little bit about how you're looking at your images when you edit them. I think the biggest thing that happens with people that get into printing is they've been editing on a really, really bright screen. Now, I've been printing for, I don't know, more years than I'd like to say. And I really think of printing as a kind of a parallel art form. So you've got, photography is complicated and difficult to get into and get it figured out exactly how to capture the best exposure, the best sharpness, all those variables that go into making a good image. Well, there's a whole bunch of new variables that come into editing to print and printing an image. And that is the same whether you're sending a print out to a lab like MPix or Bayphoto or even Costco, or whether you're printing it on your own printer. Some of those services have better technicians that are going to do color correction and kind of second guess what you intended to send them. But if you're working on a non-color calibrated system, there's a certain amount of just kind of rolling the dice with how are you editing your images. And so I'm going to talk about a simple trick for making sure that your monitor is not too bright and that the colors are somewhat close, as well as a hardware calibration technique, which is what I use to make sure that my monitor is actually calibrated to emulate what ink is going to look like when it lays down on paper with one of my printers. So if you do a tour around my studio, you're going to see a whole bunch of printers. I've been working with, everything from the first original consumer grade printer that was a complete disappointment and I had so much trouble getting prints out of. I bought a better printer thinking that was going to solve it and still found out that my prints looked like dog crap. They just look like shit, excuse my French, but you get them back, they look really, really dark. They don't look like the vibrant colors that you were editing on screen. And I've learned over the years how to get a good image soft-proofed up on my monitor that's going to look just like what comes out of my printer. And I think the biggest key is having your monitor calibrated right. So think about this. Now that we're all using LCD monitors and a lot of us are editing on laptops, a laptop's typical screen brightness, like a MacBook Pro, a modern MacBook Pro's screen brightness is about 200 candelas per square meter. Think about that like you're measuring temperature in Fahrenheit or Celsius. You're measuring the brightness of your monitor in candelas per square meter, CDM squared. And what we really want to be editing images at, if we're going to have a final output as print, is about 80 candelas per square meter. So less than half of that output range. I find that to get my MacBook Pro down to 80 candelas per square meter, when I measure it with a colorimeter, it's just a little hair above halfway turned up for screen brightness. And the problem is you're out on an airplane traveling somewhere, you're watching a movie, people have got their window shades up, it's bright as hell, you want to see the film, so you turn it all the way up, then you're exhausted, you take some photos, you get the shoot done, you jump to your laptop, you start editing on that really bright monitor. Well, if your monitor's turned up really bright and you're editing to taste looking at a really bright monitor, you're actually editing your images much darker than they really should be. So, whether I'm working on my laptop, whether I'm working on my bigger system with my Mac Pro here at the desktop, I want to calibrate my monitor before I start editing prints in the first place at about 80 candelas per square meter. And a lot of people will ask me, well, don't your prints look way too bright on other people's screens? Well, if you go through my website and if you take a look through the images that I share in general, whether it's on social media or in these videos, they're all edited at that lower screen brightness so that they'll print well. And I've never heard anybody really complain about too bright an image. I do see people's images sent to me on my color calibrated system where, whether I'm critiquing images or giving people pointers on their images or looking at students' images in workshops, often they're really, really dim. And that's because they're editing on a bright screen. So short of buying a piece of hardware, a colorimeter to hardware calibrate your monitor, there's a tip for just checking your monitor's brightness. There's a website, and I'm going to put the link in this video's description, called Check Your Monitor's Response here. That's the headline of it. It has a whole bunch of test patterns, and basically you're just going to look at it on your monitor and you can adjust it a bit. So, to see whether or not you've got the right bit depth of color, you should see a smooth transition in this test patch from red to red across the colors of the rainbow. And it gives you a couple examples of what might be going wrong if it looks wrong. Then there's just some simple white, neutral gray, black test stripes, a series of shades of gray to black, and you shouldn't see any color at all. There should be no color tinge to those. If there is, your monitor has some color drift going on. You might need to adjust some of the color channels on your monitor. Then there's a gamma setting. Gamma setting is basically sort of a curve that defines how your monitor is displaying mid-tone tones. So not the whites, not the blacks, but the mid-tones. And traditionally, Macintosh users used a gamma of 1.8 and PC users used a gamma of 2.2. Nowadays, I just set mine to 2.2. I think that in general, monitors and systems are designed around 2.2 as a gamma. I have no problem printing with a 2.2 gamma. So mine's set for 2.2. What you're going to look at here is, there's a little square around the numbers, and the one that the square kind of blends into the background pattern, that's your gamma. For me, 2.2 really blends in, so I know I've got a good gamut of 2.2. And then you've got some brightness adjustments just to see if you're seeing the brightest whites and the darkest blacks. And the most dithered one, the one that's the highest, most refined, is this A to Z chart, where you should be able to see the differentiation between Y and Z and A and B at the dark and bright ends of the spectrum, respectively. And you can just adjust your monitor's brightness down if you're not seeing the difference between A, B, C, D, E. You just start lowering your monitor's brightness value, and you should be able to see all of those gradations from A to Z. So that's, a simple way to just sort of check, how's my monitor doing as a whole. Now, I think what you want to think about doing, if you do that and you find you're getting better prints as a result, I think that moving up to that next level and buying a colorimeter is really going to help. So this is an i1 Display Pro 2. This is the colorimeter I've been using for a number of years now. It comes with its own calibration software. I don't use that. I have an NEC multi-sync 302W SpectraView monitor here. A lot of words to describe that thing. What it means is it's kind of a high-grade, color-calibrated monitor that displays nearly 100% of Adobe's RGB color space. It's a wide gamut monitor. So I'm going to plug this colorimeter into any USB port. I have one on the front of this external hard drive here that's a backup drive. Swing it around the back of my monitor, and it has a cool little weight that hangs back behind the monitor to kind of keep it balanced. And then there's a cover. You have to kind of lift this cover up, flip it around, and it exposes the actual little colorimeter there. And I'm just going to kind of drape it over the screen. I'll get it sort of set up here. You can often tilt your LCD a little bit to make it sit on there. Mine's tilted just slightly so I can do it because they're locked in on arms in place where I want them. So I'm going to go ahead and fire up this SpectraView software. That's the software that comes with these NEC SpectraView monitors. If you buy the i1 Display Pro, it'll come with its own calibration software. It'll be really similar. So it's going to open up here. I have two NEC monitors, so it has the option of calibrating both of them. And I'm going to go ahead and I've got display one. This is my main color critical display that I proof prints on. And I've got that selected here, display one. I have both of them as an option here. And there are some settings. These are the settings that I would have you target with your colorimeter if you get one. One is having the white point set to 6500 Kelvin. That's D65 is another way of saying that. So the white point's D65. That gamma we talked about at 2.2. The intensity of the monitor, that's another way of saying brightness. That's 80 candelas per square meter. Contrast ratio, I just leave at the default. And what I go ahead and do is I click calibrate. It's going to fire up that SpectraView software, and it's going to tell you where to hang your colorimeter. Right about there. Set it right over the top of that thing. And when we click continue, it's going to create a series of patterns, and it's going to basically be reading those with the colorimeter and automatically calibrating the monitor to get all those parameters set and locked in. Now, if you are using your own version of different software, if you don't have a monitor, these monitors, these SpectraView monitors have built-in programmable LUTs, lookup tables, which is really nice because the colorimeter can talk to the computer, which talks to the monitor and makes all the adjustments automatically so that you can have a beer or check your phone, do whatever it is that you want to do while it's happening. Other calibration software on monitors that don't have programmable LUTs, you'll have to go in. It'll take a reading and it'll ask you to adjust maybe the red intensity on the monitor, and then it'll take a reading and ask you to adjust the blue, and it'll take a reading and ask you to adjust the brightness and the contrast, and it'll do exactly the same thing, but you'll have to be a little bit more involved in the process. That's one of the nice things about this monitor is I can just kick back, have a beer, read my email, and so I'll do that and I'll get back to you when it's done calibrating. And boom, voila, we're done. So that's really the trick. I think that if you go in and you test whether or not your monitor is actually at a reasonable brightness for editing for prints, and you do a little printing and you find your prints improve, grabbing one of these colorimeters and truly calibrating your monitor is step two, and you're going to find that you're able to soft proof your images, whether you're using Lightroom, whether you're using ON1, whether you're using some other product. And if you get the correct profile for your printer and your paper, and you software proof how your print's going to look on that particular paper with that particular ink, you're going to find a tremendous difference in the quality of prints that you get out of your printer. So that's just a little tip. You know, there are some other things that you can learn along the way, like being really careful and checking your print at 100% for distractions, and for noise reduction, and for sharpening, and not to over sharpen at the input stage. There's a lot of tricks. I actually just wrapped up doing a whole course on shoot to print for the ON1 Software's Plus photo community. So if you're inside there, you're going to see that course pop up. If you haven't heard of it, you can Google ON1 Plus. You'll find I'm a coach year-round in there. So if you have questions about this, about calibrating your monitor, about setting up your monitor to do a little bit better job of approximating what ink is going to look like on paper, feel free, throw them on the YouTube channel comments, or send me a question at questions@hudsonhenry.com. I've had some really fun questions over the past couple of weeks. One that I really liked was by Maria. She asked me, what is your absolute favorite place ever to photograph? And it's such a tough question. I find myself kind of wanting to cheat and give an answer that I just love, that Bob Christ, a friend of mine and a mentor, often gives, which is the next place that I haven't been. But I do have some absolute favorites. I have some spots that I keep returning to over and over again. Favorite places that come to mind: for sheer island scenic beauty, I love the island of Kauai. Right now, the North Shore is still closed down because of horrific floodings, followed by a hurricane that came through right as they were making road repairs from the flooding. And that's my favorite part of the island. I have a deep family connection there. My grandmother used to manage a resort there for years and years. I've been going since I was little, and I adore that island, and I never get tired of photographing it. Patagonia, southern Patagonia, both the Chilean side, Torres de Paine, and the Argentinian side, El Chaltén and El Calafate, are one of my favorite regions in the world to explore and photograph. And I think you could take 1,000 trips there and never get tired or run out of new things to see. And I'm actually so excited. I'm taking a workshop down there this late October, early November. And I already have a significant group of people. It's probably half full already, but if you're interested in that, hit me up and we can talk about reserving one more slot. I've got almost all the details worked out before I launch that. That's going to be the epic trip of 2019. Other places that I love, the best wildlife place I've ever photographed is a place called Rabundo Island in Tanzania. Just amazingly incredible place. It's in Lake Victoria, in the southern part of Lake Victoria. I plan to get a trip organized to that in the next couple of years too. It's been a while since I've been there. I want to wait for the kids to get just a little bit bigger, maybe be able to bring them along for the whole safari part of that. I've had some questions about how I'm feeling now that I've had the Z6 for a little bit longer, Nikon's new mirrorless camera. I am so glad that I got the 6 instead of the 7. The video quality is incredible. There are a few little nitpicky things that I feel like are missing that would make me really regret replacing my Nikon D850 DSLR with the Z7. You know, backlit buttons, the knowledge of whether I'm moving left or right through images as I'm reviewing when I delete. You know, with the Z cameras, it just goes to the next image, even if you were headed backwards through the series. Just little details like that. There are some little things. The inability to be able to do depth of field preview and lock it. The fact I have to hold a button down to see depth of field narrower than f5.6. But that all being said, I absolutely love using the camera. I think the S lenses that I have are just sublime. They're incredible lenses. The 24-70 is the finest 24-70. Well, okay, I've used some Nikon's 2.8 24-70 and a really great one that Tokina makes as well. And image quality is pretty much on par. You know, it doesn't get as wide an aperture, but holy crap, it's sharp edge to edge and sharp wide open at f4. It's a really, really great compact lens paired with that camera. The 55-1.8 is really wonderful, and the video capabilities of the camera are just light years ahead of any of their DSLRs. That's what I'm filming with right now. It's a joy to use, capturing video. It's also really nice in the landscape. So there are a few things that bug me about it, and I think they need to perfect their autofocus a little bit. I can't wait for the new firmware update that's going to add eye detect autofocus and see if there's any more real improvements there. But you know, a really great camera, a great sign of things to come. And I would anticipate probably that the D850 is the best DSLR I ever have, and the Z6, the mirrorless, is where all the R&D is going to go, and it's where it should go because the revolution's pretty incredible. The fact that I can zoom into 100% through the viewfinder that's diopter adjusted for the fact that I can't focus close anymore. I have 20/10 vision at distance, which is, you know, I'm so blessed and happy about that, but I can't focus close anymore. You know, I need reading glasses to see close. So working with my DSLR, I really need to get my reading glasses on to see that screen. When I work with the Z6, I can just look through the viewfinder, which is adjusted to my eye, and zoom into 100% and see whether things are in focus, and I get focus peaking at the same time. It's just, it amplifies the available light to give me a nice bright view in darker conditions. There's definitely some great things, and the fact that I can adapt all my Nikon lenses, I'm very, very happy with it. And the last question that I got is, where is your next trip, from John? And I am actually getting ready to take off on a vacation. I haven't been on a trip that hasn't involved shooting a new photo course or doing an assignment for a client for a really long time, and my wife has been reminding me about that. So we are taking the kids, we're going with some of our kiteboarding friends, and we're packing up a ton of kiteboarding gear, kid gear, photo gear, and we're heading down near the southern tip of Baja to a very windy spot in the Sea of Cortez called El Sargento, that's right near La Ventana, south of La Paz, and I will be leaving a week from Thursday for that, so a week from when this video airs. And I intend to take you guys along on some of that trip and talk a little bit about some of the complications that arise when doing photographic work when you've got your family and other interests and things tugging at you. So it'll be a fun trip, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm not going to do that much work, so don't expect too much. I'm gonna kiteboard, hang out with the kids, make sandcastles, and do some photography too. So it's going to be kind of a three-way split of my time, and I'm really looking forward to it. So thanks everybody for watching. If you're enjoying, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I'm sure you have if you've watched it to this point already. And thanks so much. I hope that these tips that I gave you help you get a little bit better print out of your printer. If you have more questions, hit me up. You know where to send them. Thanks so much. See you next week.